Hello, pattern readers, and welcome to part 7 of the Great Hunt reread. Last week's episode did a little better on a Monday compared to Sunday, so I'm going to try and stick with that for now. We're about halfway through this book, and we've got 4 chapters to cover today, so let's get to it. Things are about to get interesting. Chapter 18, To the White Tower. Aboard the River Queen, as it races toward Tar Valon, Egwene heads below deck to her cabin that she shares with Nynaeve, who is horribly seasick. Egwene tells Nynaeve she's had another dream about Rand, and like the others, she knows it means he is in danger, and it's getting worse. Aes Sedai still says very little about the dreams, except that she will see to testing Egwene when they are back in Tar Valon. However, Egwene has kept from her that she sees in the dreams a man in a mask whose eyes are fire. There is a knock at the door, and Siuan herself enters alone to give them a lesson in the power. Nynaeve quips that it would be more useful to have a lesson in the sword, but Siuan turns this idea on its head by first making a sword with the power and then a knife. But she is dismissive of these and pivots quickly to holding Nynaeve and Egwene in flows of air to show them how easy it could be to stop someone coming at them with a weapon. Siuan chats calmly while Nynaeve shouts at her to let her go. But Siuan only starts to lift her with the power and idly mentions that if she had a mind to, she could turn someone upside down and paddle their bottom with flows of air. Suddenly, Siuan is thrown backwards up against a wall, and when Nynaeve does not immediately release her, Siuan cuts off Nynaeve's access to saidar. Nynaeve is shocked as she's dropped onto the bed, but afterwards, she's more motivated to participate. After the lesson, Egwene reflects on how the Amyrlin had coaxed and encouraged her, and she had done well, while Nynaeve had tried to keep her temper and been able to do nothing, despite Siuan's creative attempts to rouse her temper again. The ship stops, and they go on deck, getting their first glimpse of Tar Valon and Dragonmount. Aes Sedai hurry off the ship and seem to pay no mind to Egwene and Nynaeve, who are about to make their own way to the White Tower, when a red-haired Aes Sedai greets them and introduces herself as Shiriam, Mistress of Novices. Shiriam is well informed on who they are and what their lessons have been so far. She warns them that life as a novice will be hard, but the first few weeks of being an accepted, as Nynaeve is about to be, will be even harder. Chapter 19, Beneath the Dagger. It is nighttime in the mountains, and Rand has been waiting for days for Fain and the Dark Friends to catch up. He wakes and sees Cydene bending over his saddlebag and asks if she needs anything. She asks for one of his shirts to wear while she brushes her dress. He obliges, but refuses to help her with the buttons, saying it wouldn't be proper. While she undresses, he tells her they will leave for Cairhien in the morning. She tells him to turn around, and he loses all train of thought when he sees her in his shirt. Huron interrupts, waking Loial and telling them that he can see a small fire in the hills, only a couple of miles away. Rand realizes it must be Fain, and Cydene convinces him to go and see if he can take the horn and to bring Loial with him. Before they leave, she reminds Rand to remember the glory. As Rand rides with Loial, he asks him about what Cydene calls him, a Lantin, which is the old tongue and short for tree brother. Rand stays in the void and tries to avoid reaching for Cydene. As they get close, they approach the Darkfriend camp on foot. They are able to just make out the chest with the horn and the dagger on top, and a Trolloc asleep when it should have been on guard. Rand decides to creep closer, quietly grab the dagger and swiftly put it in his belt while he guides Loial to pick up the chest, and they back away quietly. They are almost away when they hear Fain wake and shout. A Trolloc comes at them, and Rand kills it with his sword while Loial runs. More come at him, and again he uses his sword while Cydene calls to him. Finally, Rand makes it back to Loial and the horses, and they race back to Huron and Cydene. Cydene immediately wants to look at the horn, and Rand tells her he can't open the chest. But in a moment, she has it open and is holding it, saying that Rand will be greater than Hawkwing. He wants none of it, and only tells her that he is going to make sure the horn gets back to Lord Agomar. But she tells him they must go to Cairhien because the Friends of the Dark will be after them, and he agrees to this. Cydene reminds him of the dagger, and he explains that it's from Shadar Logoth, and Mat needs it to be healed and for his connection to it to be severed. She tries to convince him to throw it away, but he refuses and instead tucks it into the horn inside the chest for some protection. Cydene plans to go back to sleep, but Rand is insistent that they move on that night and overrules her. We also get a quick glimpse of Fane, who is furious at Trollocs and Rand alike, vowing vengeance.
Chapter 20, Cydene.
Rand keeps them moving throughout the night, with only a brief stop at dawn, at which point Cydene wants to see the horn again. She commands Loyal to bring it to her, but Rand stops him, and they argue about it. As she is gazing into his eyes and trying to convince him, he asks her again if she is Aes Sedai, which angers her. By that night, when they are camping again, she seems to have calmed down, but she isn't talking much to Rand, only smiling at him in ways that range from charming to alarming. The next evening, they reach a village where Rand intends to stay at an inn. Surprisingly, Cydene objects, but Rand simply covers the chest with a blanket and prepares to go on. But he is stopped and pulled aside by a strange excavation site. There is an enormous crystal sphere held by a statue of a bearded man being uncovered. It pulls Rand in, and Cydene sings to him. Cydene and the others try to pull him away, but he doesn't listen. Rand lets Cydene fill him, and it is blinding. He mumbles words, till shade is gone, till water is gone, into the shadow with teeth bared, to spit in Sightblinder's eye on the last day. He shouts the last word, and the void is gone. Finally, they head for the village and an inn called the Nine Rings. Cydene tells him that he frightened her, but if he will ride on with her, she will stay by his side forever. He refuses to listen, and she turns her back on him.
Chapter 21, The Nine Rings.
At the Nine Rings, the innkeeper, Mistress Madwyn, takes Rand for a lord, Cydene his lady, and Hurin a servant. She is surprised to hear that Rand is from Andor, but she sees to getting them rooms and a meal. She asks Rand if he is hunting the Horn of Valyr, and he stumbles as he denies it. She continues to be shocked as Hurin sits at table with Rand, and the flute, which she took to be Hurin's, turns out to be Rand's instead. Though she quickly withdraws her request for music, Rand actually takes the flute out and plays several tunes, and common ones that wouldn't be found in a palace or manor. Afterwards, a Captain Caldwyn from the Kyrianan army approaches Rand and subtly questions him, seeming to also doubt that he is from Andor. When he turns to Cydene to ask for her house name, a servant girl suddenly drops an oil lamp, and Cydene uses the opportunity to excuse herself and to ask for a room by herself. Rand asks Captain Caldwyn about the statue being excavated and learns that it's from the Age of Legends. And he tells the captain that they'll be headed to the capital in the morning, and the captain suggests that they travel with some of his soldiers who are also going there, and he excuses himself without waiting for an answer. The mistress gives Rand a little unsolicited advice to tap on Celine's door and apologize to her. Rand is embarrassed, but only asks that a room be set up for him, Hurin, and Loyal, to her continued shock. In the room, Rand wonders why Captain Caldwyn was so interested in him, and Hurin begins to explain about the Great Game, also called Dias Daemar, that nobility play, and especially in Cairhien. The captain had assumed that Rand was playing as well and maneuvering to his advantage. Hurin and Loyal can tell him little, and to Rand's dismay, neither can Cydene, because in the morning she is gone, having left him a note saying she will await him in Cairhien. Captain Caldwyn introduces Elricaine Tavolin, who will command Rand's escort to Cairhien. And he's obviously thrown off guard to realize that Cydene slipped away in the night and got past his spies. Rand thinks that nothing is going as he expected as the procession takes off.
The remainder of this video contains spoilers for the entire Wheel of Time series. If you do not want to be massively spoiled, stop here or proceed at your own risk.
To be honest, the foreshadowing in Egwene's chapter is partially fun and partially not so fun. Nynaeve is sick and vows to never get on another boat again. Haha, that never works out, Nynaeve, you should know that. But it calls to mind some future boat trips she will have to take. The actual fun part, though, is watching Swan work with Nynaeve's block on a ship and looking forward to when Nynaeve's block will eventually be broken on another ship. But when Egwene thinks that Nynaeve will now never forget the trick that Swan played on her of making her swallow something disgusting, unfortunately, that draws to mind when Egwene actually pulls something similar. Not a fun thing to remember, and that's a discussion for another day. In the next Rand chapter, there's a bit of what I'll call false foreshadowing, when Rand can't seem to stop thinking that the next time he sees Egwene, she will try to gentle him. This never happens, but he thinks it often enough that I think it's meant to make us think it's foreshadowing. There's also more references to Tom's flute and cloak, and there have been throughout this book, honestly, which are all priming us for his reappearance coming up later this book. As for Cydene, I'm guessing she wasn't just planning to pull a shirt out of his saddlebag, but why not at least distract him by showing off her legs once she's caught? When Loyal explains what Atlantan means, it's another clue that she's from the Age of Legends. There's also her use of friends of the dark rather than dark friends. Overall, she just continues to act oddly, going back and forth between trying to sweet-talk Rand and growing angry at his stubborn refusal to be swayed by her talk of glory or other enticements. When Rand encounters the huge statue, there are two noteworthy things. First, of course, this is one of the Choden Call, one of a pair of enormous Sa'angreal that will come up again in a big way. This is, of course, the male Sa'angreal, and as Selene says, it is enormously dangerous because Rand is using it without the access key, which was designed to use it safely and avoid drawing too much of the power. The other interesting bit is that Rand uses the Aiel saying about spitting in Sightblinder's eye, and it seems to break him out of the Cydene trance that he almost gets lost in. Rand has heard the saying before. Loyal said it to him in The Eye of the World, and he didn't get the reference at the time. It's a nice moment. It seems as if Rand is almost drawing on his Aiel heritage, and it helps bring him back to himself. A nice little Easter egg with the name of the inn being the Nine Rings, which is, of course, a Tolkien reference, since The Lord of the Rings was a big influence for Robert Jordan. At the inn, it seems like Selene is just quiet and displeased because she's pissed off that Rand didn't want to go on with her. But the clues are there that she actually just doesn't want the scrutiny of people talking to her and possibly raising unwanted questions. She obviously causes the servant girl to drop the oil lamp to avoid being questioned. And then there's her note to Rand, which references too many people at the inn. Also, hello, stalker, for someone you just met to say, never think that I am too far from you. You will be in my thoughts always, as I know that I am in yours. So I kind of wish that I could say more about Egwene in the Egwene chapters that we've had so far, but she hasn't become as interesting of a character as she will be yet. We do see that she is a fast and eager learner and that she's able to meet Aes Sedai expectations in a way that Nynaeve doesn't even attempt to do. We also see hints of her determination not to break, and concern for Rand continues to be threaded throughout. We also see that she has this dynamic with Nynaeve, and she still sees her as someone she has to step lightly around. And that's something that will have to change eventually. Nynaeve continues to me to be the most interesting character in the Egwene chapters, along with the Aes Sedai she interacts with. Last time it was Varen, this time it's Swan, who seems to completely have her number and figure out how to get right under her skin and mostly get her to do what she wants. Not entirely, of course, because Nynaeve is insanely strong-willed. I also like how with Nynaeve, she comes across really hard, but you also see that she has this real soft spot for the people of Emond's Field. And we see that here in the way that she actually asks Shiriam to go a little easier on Egwene. And that's truly out of genuine concern. You can tell there's nothing backhanded about her asking that. The Rand and Selene dynamic continues to be the same as last time. If anything, I think Rand is growing more determined not to be guided by her. Her growing frustration is probably because she realizes she isn't really winning him over. If anything, he's resisting her more despite his obvious attraction to her. It's a really subtle thing, but when Rand is playing the flute and he notices Cydene looking at him oddly, he thinks it's because he's doing something a lord wouldn't do. And instead of trying to impress her, he goes out of his way to play songs common folk prefer, as if to defy her wishes. As far as themes in these chapters, one thing I notice is that both Rand and Egwene are just entering larger worlds that they don't really understand. Both Cairhien and Tar Valon are places where political maneuverings run deep and dangerous. We're just beginning to glimpse these machinations, really just the barest of hints, but they're all about to open up into chasms that are capable of swallowing them whole. And of course, we will see how both of them manage to get in way over their heads and yet survive. But that's a discussion for the future because it's really just beginning here. But I think the statue of the Chosen Call is sort of symbolic of this idea because it's this huge source of hidden power that can't be safely used yet, and it's just beginning to be uncovered. So I actually have a bit more to talk about in this section, which I usually just save for a little bit of fun. But there are some things that kind of walk the line between funny or not in these chapters, so I have a little bit more to say. I do find it funny when Siuan is showing Nynaeve everything she doesn't know about the power, and she almost literally turns her on her head. And I laugh when Nynaeve is shouting at Siuan, and after she leaves, saying she'd like to feed her to the fish. But what Siuan almost does to Nynaeve in threatening to spank her, and then some of the things she does do, like force-feeding her something vile, it's not so funny. So I think it starts off funny because Nynaeve is being ridiculous, talking about how swords are more useful than the power. And Siuan is right to show her how much nonsense that is. And you have to do something dramatic to get through to Nynaeve. But I can't be cool with forcibly humiliating someone because you need them to perform for you. Later, when Nynaeve understands her block and agrees to the attempts to break it, it's a little bit different. But here, I think it just emphasizes the powerlessness of Tower initiates and the way that Aes Sedai can treat them, and it's not a good look. But Loyal has some great lines in these chapters. First to Rand, after Rand wonders aloud if he's going mad when they're trying to steal back the horn and dagger. And he says, if you must go mad, could it at least wait till we are back with the Lady Selene and Huron? And I've got to laugh at Rand immediately stepping straight into Daes Daemar, and Huron and Loyal, of all people, having to try to explain it to him when they obviously have no idea either. Rand wants to know if Caldwyn sending soldiers with them is part of the game, and Loyal responds, I don't know, Rand. He's human, so it could mean anything. Oh, Rand, you're in so much trouble.
Let me know in the comments, what did you think about what Siuan did to Nynaeve? Did you think it was funny? Did it bother you at all? And I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. Next up, I'm covering chapters 22 through 24. We've got a Moiraine POV. We've got Nynaeve's accepted test. We've got Elaine and Min returning. It's going to be great. So make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.